Llamas, this is Miss Rosenbaum here. I'm making this video to help you guys out with your audition music for incoming 7th and 8th graders at 4 Points this year. For those of you that are actually doing Longhorn Band Camp, the ones at UT, these are actually the same little excerpts that you'll be using for those auditions in June, so we're just going to get you practicing the right way. As we go through this, I want you guys to know that you should be pressing pause very, very, very often. The purpose of this is for me to give you kind of a crash course in how to practice this and also give you some reference recordings of how this sounds. But ultimately, if you're not pausing about every 5 seconds or so, you're doing too fast, okay? So remember your practice steps: talk, say, finger, play. So speak the rhythm. I'll talk a lot about the rhythms, particularly in excerpt number 3, okay? Say the note names as you have the metronome on, again, saying the note names in rhythm, fingering the notes, and then playing, okay? And especially when you guys are fingering the notes, make sure you're also adding the wind band component of articulation, because there's some articulation in excerpt 2 and then also in excerpt 3 where we want to have slurs and accents. We want to make sure that we're building that in as we build the key work, okay? So I think that's kind of my good little intro. I'm actually not going to talk about excerpt 1 very much. I'm just going to briefly play it for you guys because I think you all are doing great with it and it's making a lot of sense. So I'm just going to give you a reference recording for excerpt number 1 and kind of leave it alone. The tempo that I'm going to play it at is 100. However, with all of these excerpts, the tempo that I'm going is not the tempo that you have to go. If you want to go slower, by all means, fantastic. The point is to be accurate. I'm just kind of giving you ballpark tempos, okay? So feel free to go a little on the slower side with this one. So here we go. Excerpt number 1, and this is at 100, okay? 1, 2, ready? Cool. Great. It's a little can there. For excerpt number 2, this is the song Simple Gifts. So like I was talking about earlier with the practice steps, you want to make sure that you're doing the practice step of fingering and articulating this, okay? This is kind of the third step, talk, say, finger play. I'm adding the articulation in there because you do have some slurs in measure 1. That's the first full measure, and also measure 4, which is the last measure of the first line of that excerpt number 2. Okay, so you just want to make sure that you're having those. You're building it again into the fingers so that you're building the fingers as you also build the tongue muscles. Okay, anything specific in here? Remember that there are F sharps and C sharps in this. There's a dynamic of mezzo piano at the beginning, so we'll make sure we're starting medium soft, getting louder into measure 6, okay? And then the very end, specifically the last measure, we want to be decrescendoing, decreasing in our volume. And if you want to be extra, you can also add the ritardando. The ritardando is a very fancy word for saying retard or slow down, okay? I will demonstrate this in a moment without the ritardando, okay? And then I'll do another demonstration with it. So for now, it's very okay for you guys to take this whole excerpt and play it at the same tempo and just ignore the ritardando, but I'll also give you another reference recording too. So take a look at measure 6. So if you don't already have your measures numbered, pause this and go ahead and number it because that's a really helpful for you. Measure 6, your rhythm is a dotted quarter note. You guys have seen this before, but it may be a little bit of a mystery, so I want to discuss the rhythm with you. So a dotted quarter note is like a quarter note tied to an 8th note, right? They're kind of merged together. So you have your quarter note, which takes up beat 3, and then you have an 8th note, which takes up half of a beat. I'm trying to give you like a half a finger. Sorry if that's weird. So instead of making it a full beat, right, it only gets a half. So we have the quarter note on beat 3, right, and it's beat 3, and also with the dot is the first half of beat 4. Does that make sense? So when I'm counting through that with the A, I would say 3-4 because it's beat 3 and again the first half of beat 4. If we put a metronome on with that, my metronome is going to be at 80 with this. Here's how that measure sounds. So here's measure 6, clapping. 1, 2, 3-4, and, okay? Go ahead and pause, review that multiple times. I'm gonna do it one more time with you, but again, feel free to loop this as much as you would like, preferably like 5 or 6 times in a row, okay? Last time, ready, and 1, 2, 3, dash 4, and, okay? So besides breaking things down and going piece by piece, I'm gonna give you an overview of how this sounds. I'm gonna do it at 2 tempos. The first tempo I'm gonna do is actually a little slower than what I was just clapping with you guys. I'm gonna play through it at 70 without the retardando, okay? Pay attention to my rhythm and then my articulation, particularly the slurs, okay? One last thing before I play. The line above the high A's, actually pretty much every time you have them, that's a horizontal line above the note head. That means legato. That means long articulation there, okay? It's not a rhythm, okay? It's an articulation. I wish I could kind of flip this around, but then it'll be backwards. For example, measure 5, the D there, the first note, you have that legato articulation, so you're just gonna keep it long, okay? We still tongue it, it's just long versus staccato, which means short. Okay, so excerpt 2, 70, no retard. Here we go. 1, 2. And again, feel free to loop through that, play it through it as many times as you want. I want you guys to feel super comfortable. But of course, all that is after you have done these measures individually. Again, you know how to practice, and I know I'm talking a lot about the practice method, but I want to make sure you guys are doing that because it's so important. It's going to help you guys a lot in 7th and 8th grade band. Okay. Last time, excerpt number 2, we're going to go a little faster, and this time I will do the retardando at the end. So you will hear me coming off a little bit with the metronome there at the end. That's intentional, because a retard means to slow down a little bit, so I'm intentionally going to kind of put on the brakes there a little bit. Okay, but I will be with the metronome the entire rest of the time. All right, here we go. Excerpt 288. 1, 2... And you heard me intentionally getting slower there in the last measure. Okay, again, you do not have to. If you want to ignore the retardando, I don't think Mrs. Gonzalez and Ms. Rubinock are going to hold it against you, but that's how it would sound. Okay, send me recordings, ask me questions, all that good stuff is fair game. But for now, I'm going to move on to the third excerpt. So third excerpt, we have a lot of funky little rhythms going on in here. So first of all, you need to mark your measures, because I'm going to be talking measure specific for this one. And also reviewing how to count 16th notes. So we fit 4 16th notes in one beat, right? And the way we count them, the way we say them out loud is 1, E, and So the first 16th note in any pattern, okay, is always going to fall on the downbeat, okay? And that also means beat 1, okay? So it's always going to occur on whatever the beat number is. The second 16th note in a group is always going to fall on the E. So if you look at, for example, measure 7, where you have those 4 16th notes in a row, we would count that as 1, E, and okay? That also happens to be the same rhythm for measure 5, okay? So again, we count 16th notes. First one is 1, second one is E, the third one is and, which we'll talk about in just a second, and the fourth one is okay? So what I want us to do is I just want us to clap measure 7, but just beat number 1 and number 2. And the reason we're only doing little chunks at a time is because, again, I want you guys to understand the rhythms with this before we start putting all the things together. I have my metronome on over here, and I'm having it at 8th note equals 90, okay? 8th note equals 90. That would be like quarter note equals 45, but again, I'm going nice and slow because I want this to feel really good in your fingers. Don't worry about going the written full tempo, that's totally fine, okay? So if you want to have your metronomes on with me or just listen to mine, either is great. We're going to clap measure 7, beats 1 and 2. All right, here we go. 1 E and a 2 and. Again, here and ready and go. 1 E and a 2 and. So you hear how the click of the metronome is the 8th note. 1 E and a 2 and. Okay? So again, pause, rep that many, many, many times, and then turn this back on. The next rhythm I want to go over is actually at the end of measure 7, ironically, and it's the 8th note followed by the 2 16th notes, okay? So the 8th note takes up the first half of the beat, right? Remember we were talking about how the 16th notes are always 1 E and a. So in this case, the first half of the beat is taken up by that 8th note, so we kind of put that away, in which case the C and the A, the last 2 16th notes in this, fall on the E and the A, okay? So here's how that sounds. I'm just going to clap the rhythm of measure 7, beat 3, okay? Here's measure 7, beat 3. It will go 3 and a. One more time. 3 and a, okay? If we put that all together, okay, and again, pausing for each of these, if we put that all together with the other 16th notes in measure 7, here's what we've got. Here's measure 7, 1 E and a 2 and 3 and a. Good. One more time. 1 E and a 2 and 3 and a. And just like that, you've learned the rhythms for measure 7 and measure 5. Okay, because they happen to be the same thing, which is really, really helpful for you, okay? The next thing I'm going to go over is I know I'm jumping around a lot, sorry about that, but measure 6 and then measure 4. So measure 6, just because we have similar rhythms here, we're going to take what we just did with the 8th note and the 16th notes and just add some other 8th notes to that. So measure 6, again, here is your 8th note. Measure 6 would sound 1 and a 2 and 3 and. Again, 1 and a 2 and 3 and, which happens to be your rhythm for the measure right above it. Measure number 1. Here's measure 1. Same rhythm. 1 and a 2 and 3 and. Okay. Now, measure 4 is the same. You're just going to hold beat 3 longer because it's a quarter note here. So measure 4 is 1 and a 2 and 3. And you kind of hear the pulse in my voice, so I'm holding it out the full amount, okay? Measure 8, again, had the same, very similar rhythms here. We're going to have quarter notes on beats 2 and 3. So measure 8, which starts on a G, is 1 and a 2, 3. Okay? So to review all of that, I know it's a lot, okay? Here is measure 1, also measure 6, rhythm-wise, I should say. So rhythm of measure 1 is 1 and a 2 and 3 and. Rhythm of measure 4, 1 and a 2 and 3. Rhythm of measure 8, here we go. 1 and a 2, 3. Good. Going back to the rhythm of measure 5 and measure 7, because again, they're the same notes there, but here's the rhythm of measure 5. Ready? 1 E and a 2 and 3 and a. Let's do it one more time. Measure 5 and go. 1 E and a 2 and 3 and a. Almost done. Okay. I know it's a lot. So again, pause. The last thing to go over, we only have one more rhythm, is the rhythm at measure 2. So I'm looking at the dotted 8th note, okay? So going back to our principle of 1 E and a, and that's how we count the 16th notes, we have the first 3 of them tied together by the dotted 8th note, okay? So I'm looking at measure 2, that's the D. The dotted 8th note there is taking up 1 E and. So they're all kind of squished together, and then we're left with the ah. That happens to be on the note E, okay? But we count it, that rhythm of measure 2, beat 1, as 1, Listen to it with the metronome. 1, See I'm counting? 1 E and a. It's tied together. 1, One more time. 1, If we clap it, measure 2, beat 1, we'd have 1, One more time. 1, Okay? Repeat that a little bit because I know that's a very new one for you guys. But we have that in measure 2 and measure 3. So here's measure 2 with the other notes around it. So measure 2, full, is 1, 2, and 3. One more time. Measure 2 and clap. 1, 2, and 3. Okay? Now we just apply that to measure 3 as well. The dotted eighth note, I mean. Okay? Here's how we clap measure 3. 1, 2, and 3, and. One more time. Here's measure 3. 1, 2, and 3, and. Okay. Now what I want you guys to do, again, pause, rep those more individually. We're going to clap through the whole thing. Okay? Again, my eighth note is at 90, okay, which means my quarter note is at 45. And here we're going to just clap through all of it. All right, here we go. Clapping. 1, 2, from the top and go. 1, and 2, and 3, and 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3, and 1, and 2, and 3. 1 and 2, and 3, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 1 and 2, and 3, and 1, and 2, 3, 1 dash 2 dash 3 dash 1, 2. Okay? Again, loop as much as you need to. But there we go. We did it. Yay! Now, after you've done all the other practice steps of getting this in your fingers and your tongue, here's how that all sounds, okay? You're welcome to also use this time, or use this, I should say the next thing I'm going to play, to clap along with, just so you can also get the rhythm that way. I know when we're doing it kind of with our drone robot voice, it can be hard to figure out where I am. So feel free to clap along as you listen to this, but do not play it yet if you have not done the finger work, okay? All right, here's how that sounds. Okay. Here we go. 1, and ready. So it's going to seem like for the last 3 measures, measures 8, 9, and 10, you're going to be holding forever. You're not. Just count. Just count. That's really the theme of the day, okay? We're going to do that one more time, actually. I'm going to go a hair faster. I'm going to go with my quarter note at 55. So my eighth note is now at 110, okay? Work your way up incrementally in groups of 4s. Don't do these big jumps like I am. Again, I'm trying to give you a big overview. But here's what it would sound like at quarter note equals 55. Okay? 1, 2, sorry, let me count better. 1, and 2, and 3. Feel free to do that eyebrow raise at the end too. Okay, my little chickadees, feel free to email me recordings, questions, all that good stuff. Again, I want you guys to feel super comfortable. And if you want to thank me, you can come to my concert on Saturday night. I'm playing with Awesome Saxophone Ensemble at St. Matthew's Episcopal at 7:30. I would love for you to be there. It'll blow your mind in a really, really good way. All right, I will see you all Monday. Bye.